All right, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome everyone to the board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Dave, do you have any questions on attendance?
Nope.
Does anybody have any additions or corrections to the board agenda?
A little bit of everything. Added an addition, we had someone sign up for open forum, so that was added to the electronic copy. We added an addition in the employment for a cheerleading coach, and 2 additional resignations that have been added to the board agenda. Ms. Hinckley had an action item, so we added those words in, that there's an action item in her report. We added the Jaguar Pride, and the big update is letter D in your electronic copy. I updated the LTFM, so we have more accurate numbers in there. Leo, you have a hard copy of that, and those are my additions.
All right, does anybody have any questions regarding the additions or anything on the agenda approval? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve it.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Open forum, rules for open forum. 3 minutes per speaker. Open forum shall not take more than a total of 15 minutes. No complaints about individual staff members. All presenters will conduct their business in a manner that meets community standards for decorum. The board will not take action on items presented in an open forum. And it looks like we do have Eric that has signed up. Eric, would you like to speak?
Yeah. So as you guys know, I wrote a letter a couple of weeks ago, so I don't need to rehash my letter. But as far as I guess you guys tonight and maybe the kind of the public audience, I just wanted to kind of vouch for my art program a little bit and the students that I try to serve. So one thing that kind of is a precursor to this is the latest that I heard, which the stuff changes a lot, but the latest I heard is that my college art class won't be offered next year. I had 8 kids register for it, and so I think every once in a while the public should kind of hear or understand that our district is very aggressive in their policies of saving money rather than investing that money into our students. So every once in a while, normally that's kind of like, okay, whatever, but every once in a while, it impacts the outcomes that we have for our students. So, I know the staff that works here, being in the union president, even our staff doesn't really understand that we like to bank more money than pretty much all the districts in the area. So, so I doubt that the public is really aware of that. But, due to the self-imposed budget fears, here's where I'm at. I'm trying to offer 6 college credits to students, and even if it's 8 students, we live in a small town, we have a small school, we don't have 300 kids that are college bound walking our hallways. That's just how it is. So if you're going to commit to having programming for kids, then in my mind, you have to commit to those 8 kids. Maybe it's 4 kids that sign up 1 year. To me, you have to commit to those kids because we just don't have the numbers. And if you're not making that commitment, what you're doing is you're not providing the extra experiences that they could possibly have, and it's just kind of a base level sort of education that they get. So in my letter, I kind of talk about how I uniquely positioned myself in my career to be able to teach this class, and so that's something personally that gives me my own fulfillment, and I would hope that that's a factor that you guys can at least empathize with. So it's not just about the students; it's a little bit about me too. I understand, but I'm vouching for the kids that want the opportunity. I hope that our values are expressed through our actions, in that we commit to those kids that want this type of opportunity. So, I basically, my points, I'm trying to close here, but my points were, looking at how we spend money. I get that we have to draw the line somewhere, but, you know, maybe it's not sacrificing this program or this class. Secondly, you know, there's a lot of teachers, and I wanna point out, there's a lot of teachers that have passion for these sorts of things, and, you know, so I would encourage more teachers to kind of have these kinds of conversations, so it's not just me all the time. There's that. I did want to thank Shelley Scaff for being the lone board member or administrator who reached out to me following my letter. You know, I think she deserves props on that. So I hope as the budget items get wrapped up in the next several weeks that these concerns will be put behind us and we can all move on. And I stood up here and gave this speech for no reason. So hopefully we can have college art next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. I do believe Brian did respond to you, but he forwarded it on to us, just so that is noted, and Brian will, with budgets and that, we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Next up is, did anybody else wish to speak? The next up is Gabe with our insurance presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to start out with a quick recap of last year. We were able to leverage a competitor that we have within our agency, another carrier, to keep our premiums relatively flat last year, which was a phenomenal thing to do, given the fact that things were changing. I did include in your packet the property rates, how things are impacting. It's not just commercial property. You will see this on your homeowners. If you haven't seen it yet, you'll see it very soon. And how these commercial, that article kind of talks about how things are being impacted, whether it's the catastrophic losses, the inflation, insured to value. That article kind of brings into play all things impacting property. So how that played out this year, we saw some increases in our property and some other lines too in our package, but most specifically property. So we met, Joanne, myself, and Superintendent Masterson met, and we kind of went over some options regarding what could we do. And we did leave one option on the table with the property, increasing the current $1,000 deductible to a $5,000 deductible. Superintendent Masterson may agree to do that, or leave it to the board to decide to do that. But I think the savings was a little over $9,000 to do so. EMC did take, the reason why we saw such a big jump was there, typically every year we see a 4% increase in our property, the building values and the business personal property, the belongings around us. This year, to try and keep up with inflation, they took a 9%. They aren't the only carrier that is doing this. They're trying to keep everything insured to value so we're not behind. That was one of the biggest factors, as well as statewide increases because of claims. Last year was not a successful year for any carrier. There was a lot of payouts because of claims. So as far as the biggest factor that we had seen, and I know there was a prior, I don't think he's here this evening, but our prior meeting last year, there was a discussion or concern about an EPL claim and how that could possibly impact the premiums. And we did see a slight increase in that line. Part of it was part due to the actual claim, but the other part was statewide increases as well. Other school districts had claims in that specific line of EPL. Basically, it's what that coverage is. It's wrongful termination. It protects you all as far as any alleged harassment, things like that. So that's what we saw, a little bit of an increase as well in that. So as far as the options goes, I'll leave that up to Superintendent Masterson as well as you all regarding the $5,000 deductible. Looking forward regarding the next renewal, strategically we'll play this again. We will pit or work against with other carriers to see if EMC will be competitive. Liberty Mutual's waiting in the wing per se to see if they could capture business, but we have a great relationship with EMC. They've have done a lot through the history of the school board, and I will bring that up next year. But if we're able to, again, I told Superintendent Masterson when we met that if Liberty Mutual is very competitive and the coverage is there, this might be a viable option. Again, if EMC is pushing higher premiums than Liberty. So we'll check that out and run all of our markets next year and make sure that we're doing the best we can to stay competitive with the coverages that we need with our district.
When Joanne, Gabe and I met, we thought, as far as the options for renewal, we would recommend, EMC option 2, moving our property to a $5,000 deductible and leaving our autos where they're at. Didn't feel the autos moving to that $1,000 deductible had enough savings in case we have more auto stuff, then it's more likely to happen. I can't remember, I don't know if Gabe, you know off the top of your head, last time we had a major property insurance claim. It's much rarer than auto, but.
Right, if I can remember the claim, we ran the 10-year loss runs, there was a $5,000 loss. I'm sorry, it was this year, it was $6,500, and it was kind of a fluke situation with the HVAC system and its components. Prior to that, it's been quite some time that we've had one. So, and yeah, so that was probably the last one. Prior to that was 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
And then you can see the savings is about roughly $9,000 if you chose that option.
So is that where everybody wants to go? Change the only major change is changing the deductible on property claim from 1,000 to 5,000.
Yes, correct.
So if there are no further questions, Gabe is looking for a motion to approve the proposed insurance with that change and go with option 2.
I'll make the motion to go with option 2.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So the motion passes 6-0. Next up is a discussion on Brennan Field's baseball netting.
So this came up, there was a community member who went to their insurance agent, which then contacted Gabe and our company. There's been a lot of foul balls that happen, whether it's at our high school baseball games or at Knight's baseball game. And then they asked us to discuss or look into discussing what it would look like cost to add some additional netting to the baseball field at Brennan Field. So Gabe and I met with EMC, a representative from EMC, just to see if we are in compliance, if there's anything we have to do. The consensus was we are within the law, our fencing's within the law, but maybe it's not, but the words they used was best practice. So their recommendation from EMC was maybe get a quote, see if we want to go forward anything. As far as I know, the district's only had the district or the Knights have only had one claim from this property owner in the 12 or 13 years that they have lived there. But wanted to get the quote just to get some numbers, some discussion, not looking for approval, anything. I'm just looking, does the board want me to look into anything more, anything less, kind of leave it at this, but I have 2 different quotes. The first one, which is less, the one that just says quote, was just assuming we put fencing about 100 feet down the third baseline, and then you can see the different heights of either 30 feet in height, 35 feet in height, 40, 45 feet in height, or 50 feet in height. And that range, this is without labor, is just for materials between $19,500 and $48,500. And then the second quote, as I talked to a few more baseball people, things like that, I don't know if 100 feet would fully cover us or cover that property. So I just had Beacon, which has done some baseball netting for other high schools, move that to 200 feet in length, and then the same heights, 30, 35, 40, 45, and 50. I've been at baseball games myself where I don't know if we can put a net up high enough to prevent everything. Where I've seen baseballs go above our field lights into the properties nearby. So I don't know if there's a solution that would catch all. What I was told by Beacon is labor is 1 to 1.5 times whatever the price is of the product we choose. I have not reached out yet to Minnesota Power, as there's power lines right there. I don't even know if it's feasible to do this. What Beacon suggested was the netting would go on the inside of the fence on the field side, so maybe it wouldn't affect power lines, maybe it would. I haven't made that phone call yet. And the other thing Beacon really wanted to know, which is the company, is what's underground, what's underneath. Is it sand, is it dirt, is it concrete? You know, what does our field lie on? I haven't dug into that yet either. Just wanted to have a conversation with the board to see if, do you want, you know, between EMC and myself to get more information? Are there more questions, wonderments, just to start the conversation?
Well, I think if there's not been a claim once in 12, 13 years, I can't see spending that kind of money for that.
How did that one claim come out, Gabe? Are we responsible for the window?
That was with another carrier, and from what I understand, that they did pay out. And I think the amount of time, if I can add to what Superintendent Matheson had talked about, my biggest concern is what they had done, and I kind of expressed that as far as setting the precedent. When it comes to, you know, EMC was gracious enough to walk the property, take time with us, and just kind of see for herself what it looked like. And the property next door has a great canopy. I mean, there's trees everywhere, so it is protecting the property quite well. But you will never get rid of any foul ball. I think many people that play the game or watch the game understand that you will never get rid of that deterrent in its completeness. So that was my concern when I talked with Renee at EMC, is we need to be very careful as far as setting the precedent here. Cars in the parking lot, cars next door, other structures, other items, people watching the game. I mean, where does this stop? So I think, with all due respect, I think that's the biggest thing, and I've just kind of let EMC know that we need to be very careful and do our due diligence with this and make sure that we're making the right decision, not only for the district, but for EMC as well. And I'm in agreement that the net is just not in my opinion, it's not a viable option for the district to do something like that. You're not gonna stop them all. I think there is I think right now there's been good working relationship. The foul balls are put into a bucket at the end of the road, so people aren't going into her yard. It's working. But that's kind of where things are at right now.
So if I'm a fan and I get a broken window sitting in a parking lot, that should be my responsibility, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And my insurance companies or whatever.
Yep, that's glass claim or out of your own pocket if you have a
Right.
glass claim. I mean, essentially, at some point in time, you as a fan are accepting the responsibility of where you park your car,
Yeah.
or where you park yourself in a seat when you're watching a sporting event. And that can go for softball, can go for basketball,
Yep.
can go for any sport, so.
But I guess she also bought a house next to a ball field that's been there for 100 years. So don't you take on that risk also?
And I did bring that up with EMC as well as, I think both of us did, about, you know, I think I use the analogy of kind of a different situation where if you buy a house on a golf course that's next to the fairway, you're assuming the risk of golf balls hitting your vinyl siding or through a window. You know, could that person that put that ball through a window, could they stop and give their information? Possibly, and their homeowners could accept that and pay for it, yes. But is it true negligence for our district to see that? In my opinion, I don't think the district is negligent when a foul ball goes and potentially damages their property. I don't see negligence there.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
I would agree with Shelley and Gabe's recommendation to not pursue it.
Okay. You have your answer?
Yep.
Thank you, Gabe.
You're welcome.
we are going to go to the consent agenda. Does anyone need anything pulled from the consent agenda? And is there anything added that you didn't tell us?
Not only what I told you at the beginning of the meeting.
Alright, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor,
I'm gonna abstain from this one.
all in favor say aye,
Aye.
and Angela's gonna abstain. Motion passes 5-0. Dave, are you good?
Good.
Okay. Next up is bills. If you have any questions on the bills, please state the page number and the bill number. Does anybody have any questions on the bills? If there are no questions, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the bills, paying the bills.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is superintendent's report. Brian.
You can see some of the things that are happening this month with meetings, things like that, both for myself and for board committee meetings. Just number 2, a reminder, if you haven't turned in reimbursement claims to the district, we'd like that wrapped up in this fiscal year, so if you could take care of that. If you haven't, please do so. Number 3, again, we will be offering, which will now be 15 years in a row, student insurance to families. We have a handful of students, especially in the high school, who take this option every year. Doesn't cost the district any money. We don't receive any money back. It's just another way to offer some insurance. And we have a lot of kids, especially in the sports program, that take that. So just letting you know that we will continue that practice going to the next school year. And the other big update is the Great River Conference did approve. Mora, Crosby, Ironton, and Aiken did apply and were approved to join the Great River Conference. That is effect for the 24-25 school year. And so the planning right now, they do plan to have, at least in the sports, in most sports, they'll have a bigger half of the conference and a smaller half, and there'll be 2 conference champions. That won't be perfect in every single sport, but most sports will have 2 conference champions. It'll be determined by school size, but the ADs are reworking the constitution next year as we get ready for 24-25 with input from Mora, Crosby, Ironton, and Aiken. So just wanted to update you all on that.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian? All right, then we'll move on to Ms. Henke.
Good evening. First on my report is the handbooks. They're not quite ready yet, but I will have them ready for the July school board meeting. Second thing is graduation. Went really, really well. It was my first year, so but based on my expectations, I was really pleased with how well everything went. We had 68 students graduate on the 26th, 51 from the high school, 9 from Empower, 3 from adult basic education, foreign exchange students. There were 4, and then we had 1 student moving to the transition program next year, and then we only had 3 students that weren't able to walk on graduation day. So very, very wonderful day that was. I really liked, had a lot of good feedback of what having it on Friday, other good feedback from the community, so very happy with that. Number 3, I'm looking for board approval to send, Marin Shashinsky would like to attend the Midwest Clinic International Band and Orchestra Conference in Chicago in December. This is the largest clinic offered in the Midwest, and it has a lot more offerings and opportunities than anything in Minnesota. So I was looking for board approval. The PD committee has already approved it, so just now looking for board approval.
So, I need a motion to approve out of state travel for, Ms. Shoshinsky.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
So does this come out of the general fund then, or out of the?
Staff development
Yeah,
dollars.
okay, fine, thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Number 4 is just reviewing principal goals from the school year. As I was reflecting on kind of how things went this year and looking at these goals, it's kind of funny thinking back to last August and then looking at how things went now. Is a lot of learning, a lot of great opportunities. Very thankful from the community, school board, staff, students, all the support. It's really been a great year. So there's been progress on these goals, but there still is a lot more work to do, a lot more people to get to know. I really hope to be in classrooms more next year, focusing more on instruction. Hopefully over the next few months, looking at putting in some different systems, making some changes in the handbooks, which is why they're not ready yet. So we can be more proactive next year and really start moving things forward. So again, I plan to have the same kind of goals moving forward next year, and we'll have some ideas and things for you in August of how to move those things forward. Number 5, our school board members for 23-24 will be Hannah Hartle, Brecken Hansen, and Matthew Masterson. We're gonna have 3. It was hard to pick from those 3 because they're all 3 fabulous. So those 3 agreed to do that. So they will be our school board members. And then my summer dates, summer school starting tomorrow. And then also I will be attending with the teachers, the CPM, or doing some leadership CPM training for 3 days down in the cities. I'm really hoping to get some more information on how I can better support that program moving forward. Any questions?
I just have one question for the graduation ceremony. I took some feedback too about it and stuff, and I thought you did great up there speaking. That was wonderful and everything. I was just kind of wondering, like, as far as when we make changes to our, traditional ceremony, doesn't it go through the board, or shouldn't it go through the board for approval first before we make changes?
It's never gone through the school board, not that there's been major changes. What Mr. Prater always said was it was the principal's decision. While I was principal, we made a couple small changes in there. I didn't seek board action, so it's never gone through the school board, at least in my time in the district, for approval for changes or additions to the graduation program.
Because I'm just, like, at the end, it just seemed like there was a lot of confusion with the students, the recessional coming back out and everything.
Yep.
And I know we've never had anything like that before, so I'm just wondering, are we too setting precedent for future if other groups also want to be able to do something? Are we would have to allow that?
I think next year, just reflecting on how that kind of end was a little bit disjointed, is we're gonna definitely, before we start the ceremony, kind of go over expectations and just kind of what's gonna happen so that the community kind of understands that process and make sure that people remain seated so that people can take pictures and see what's going on and things like that. As far as any major changes, I think, Brian and I work together and talk about things, and I think the focus is always about making sure that we follow our, district mission about students being known, valued, and challenged to succeed. And any changes we made this year really was to encompass that value and making sure that all students that participate in music programs were represented in their graduation ceremony.
Okay. I just didn't know if any of the other board members felt that changes to our ceremony should be board approved or not.
I guess I didn't think that about it not coming to the board, but I will say that I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great way to not only showcase like our band and choir, but to showcase the drum group that also like performs their music at school, and it's a school activity. I enjoyed it. So I thought it was just a really positive way to show like what that group is doing as well, and not just the traditional band and choir. So I liked it.
I attended, I thought it was great. I hadn't attended for a few years, but I did leave before the very end to beat the crowd. So if there was anything at the end, I missed that. So, but what I saw was great, I think, and I told Kim that.
I don't know that it necessarily needs board approval, because then I don't know where it stops. But I think a heads up or in your, I suppose, May board report, board, if there is a change, maybe that's just,
That would be welcome.
that would be a compromise there.
Absolutely.
Cause then I don't know where the board stops and where the principal begins to have the actual planning of the ceremony, but I definitely think if it's changed, the full board should know.
Sure, absolutely.
Alright, any other questions for Ms. Henke? We did your action items, so we're gonna move on to Mrs. Sculler.
Good evening, happy June. I too will be bringing my handbooks to you, I'll bring mine in August. I will not be attending the July meeting. One of the things I'm waiting for in July would be some more clarity on the new legislation that they passed in regards to the lessening the suspension of K through 3 students. So I really need to take a hard look at what our consequence is going to look like. We take some feedback from teachers already of kids are put back into the classrooms too quickly and not necessarily ready to learn. And I want to hear them and I want to figure out now what do we do with our hands being tied a little bit more. So really gonna look at the use of restorative justice practices, but I really wanna lay that out to parents as well. So I'm looking for some more clarity on what does that look like. And in severe cases, as we have seen an uptick in our severe behaviors at a younger age. So that'll be kind of the hold up on my handbooks right now. Staffing and master scheduling. Master schedule at Hinckley, we had wind time built in last year, 2 specific blocks, one for ELA and one for math. Moving to 23-24, we're going to go to 1 50-minute block of wind time. It was very evident that all kids need to be in core, and we are able to do that a lot more when we identify a block of time where kids come out and really focus on what they need. So looking forward to see how that looks this coming year. It was very welcomed mid-year last year when we made that change. So looking forward to moving forward to that. No huge changes with the FES schedule. This has currently changed since I typed it up last week. We do have 1 staff opening at FES. We still are in need of 2 SPED teachers, a 2nd grade teacher, and a 5th grade in math who we had filled and it didn't work out. So, and currently we're at 7, possibly 8 para positions open for next year at HES. So we'll have some big shoes to fill and high demands on that. Our dean position is also open, so I guess that's another one that can be added there. Some things that we're working on over the summer. For one, we have to fill those positions, but really getting to know them and onboard them so they feel comfortable as they start a new year. Today I met with our building leadership team. We're building practice profiles about the evidence-based practices we'll be using, and specifically with ELA next year, when we talked a lot about what our district goal will be during PLCs in regards to SEL. I think that was really well received by my leadership team, and looking forward to continually build those relationships with high school staff as well as Finlayson elementary staff. Really diving into our PLC time on Wednesdays to make sure that that's effective, and working to onboard more people with bridges, and you'll see some of the data later in the report that really supports what we did with bridges this year. You can kind of read through what we did for reward days. I guess the good thing about that is 80% or better of our kids were able to participate in each one of those quarterly reward days. So looking to continue that. Any of those costs that were accrued through that were paid for by our fundraising, so none of that came out of general funds. As Ms. Henke said, summer school starts tomorrow. We currently have 65 gen ed kids signed up, which is pretty good after only being out of school for a week. That 65 are gonna come back and they're ready. And 28 students who receive special ed services are confirmed to come in, with more sitting on the fence whether they do or not. We are able to host a pre-K summer school this year, which is exciting. And that was due to a grant that Ms. Fritz filled out, so, really, really thankful that we get to do that. I believe with some additional funding in that grant, we're actually bringing an author in this coming week, so pretty excited about that. Mr. Glowacki, with the help of Mr. Richter, put on an amazing art show. For the work that he puts in, we don't see the support, I guess, returned or the attendance, and I know it's just a really tough time as parents are spread really thin, cause they have kids in every school, right? So their time is pretty tough to get that, so we're working with Matt to say how do we make sure that your work is being recognized and we get the people from the community to see the amazing work that he's doing. So some of the things we've talked about are doing it over conferences, although that's spread over 2 days and he has it spread out all throughout the cafeteria, so, with limited time and space, it's challenging, so he's not giving up, he does want to continue to pursue it, just what can we, work out so it's a little less, little better attended and it doesn't cause like a huge stress on him, so. I'll let you look over the snapshot from our, this is our benchmarking data, this is not MCA's, because that's still in preliminary results, but I just want you to see like 2nd through 6th, we'll have also the growth percentage on there. We really shoot for typical or aggressive growth. I'll specifically look at 1st grade math. If you can see, we only have 4 kids at the end of the year who did not meet. I don't know as if I get chills right now just talking about it, but I don't know if I've ever seen results like that. So, 2 of the 3 teachers were using bridges. They piloted bridges this year, and we really saw some amazing results. Of the 29 students who partially met, 12 of those students were within a point or 2. So, I mean, we really saw some amazing, amazing results. And just to watch the kids and how they react when they find out they're this successful, that they can do these things. So, it was pretty cool. So take a look at the testing data as you go through, recognizing we had some amazing, amazing growth as well. It's gonna take us a few years with Amplify to get to where we need to be, but at least we're making that aggressive growth, so. One thing I also didn't update the board on because it was the night before, we also hosted a 6th grade graduation. We had some 6th graders that came to us and said, would it be cool if we could do a walkthrough, like the seniors do? And we thought, yeah, that would be really cool. And all of a sudden, we got a couple more teachers on board and it turned into a really, really cool graduation experience at HES. And I think that is something that we will continue to do. The one thing that we'll look at is, parents wanna come in. But I think it was just a really great celebration for our other students to see the accomplishments of our 6th graders. So I would like to kind of keep it at that for right now, but we'll see. I mean, the doors are kind of wide open, so. Just wanna thank you guys for the amazing support throughout the school year. We had another great year, so.
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Sillard? My only thought, Bonnie, was could you do an art, I know you'd have to bring them to the high school, but could you do the art show at the high school during, the Christmas program day, or not Christmas program, is it holiday?
Winter.
It was a winter program.
Winter
Or the
program.
spring, or the spring, like this, did they do spring?
They do winter and
Do a
It was a
spring,
spring one.
maybe a spring one that would give them more time to collect student work.
Yeah.
That is something I could take back, to appreciate that idea.
I know you'd have to haul it, but.
Lots of volunteers, kids wanna get out of class.
It's well attended,
Yeah,
or it has been. Thank you, Bonnie.
thank you.
Next up is Sarah, transportation report.
So summer school this year, we are gonna run 4 buses. Late last week, I had to add another type 3 route, so it'll be 3 type 3 routes. There was a student that came late last week who will need additional support as well, so I'm gonna have to add a para as well on that transportation vehicle. So I got that finalized today. It was very short notice, but I had a bunch of good people. They're gonna help me, so yay for that. So I have enough vehicles and drivers, just enough, but I will have to drive one of the type 3 routes since we added another one, cause, a lot of my staff is doing things like right after school gets out, so, it is what it is. So that would be an add-on to my summer school section. Training this year, me and Dan are gonna go to train the trainer again. This year they're gonna have it in St. Cloud. Instead of, I think the last 3 or 4 years they've had it down in Minneapolis at a convention center down there. Prior to that, and I only got to go 1 year, prior to that they had it in Hinckley, which was wonderful. I did receive an email again late last week on a training, that the state wants, as many people as they can get involved in. It's a school bus security and awareness training, that's happening in Bloomington. It's free, for us to go to, they just want to, it says Minnesota State Patrol TSA T-Start Workshop is what it's called. And so if anybody is interested in going with me, they said who should attend, and it says personnel with responsibilities for your organization's risk management and security plans, policies and procedures. So if anybody would be interested in going with me, that is July 11th. Trips, we had a lot of trips this last year, a lot of new trips we had this last year, which was nice to see because they were going to different places. But the teachers were great, they always kept me informed of when they were doing trips, and we have kind of a system in place where they let me know, it gets put on a spreadsheet, and then we just make sure that everybody gets to where they're going. I haven't heard anything on the new bus yet, or Dan, so when I hear, I will let Brian know immediately, and then he can let you guys know as well. It will, I do know that it will be another conventional gas. We're gonna try to integrate more gas into the, we were told at one point that in 2020 they were gonna come with a gas flat noise, but I have not heard if they had done that yet or not. I would like to stick with flat noise, but if we have to move to conventional, and that's just, because I'm not very skilled with conventional. I've always, since I've been in the district, this is the only district I've been in, and I've only driven flat nose, so that's just, I would just have to have more training. Activity routes, the numbers for May and June, actually we didn't have any activity bus in June, but the numbers for May were down. It was 91 students compared to April, where there was 214 students. And I send all of that information to Brian and Mandy, so if you have any questions on what the ridership looked like for a whole year, that spreadsheet is shared with Brian, so.
We saw it last month.
Okay. And again, you know, it was another tough year. there were a lot of ups and downs, but I just wanna thank everybody, for their continued support, throughout this whole year.
Does anybody have any questions for Sarah?
Sarah, what's the cost per mile for gas versus diesel?
I guess I don't even know. I have never checked that out. I know we didn't have any gelling with the gas.
I bet we can run that and we
Yeah.
can track the miles per each vehicle. I'm sure we could run that, get a rough number.
Yep.
Anything else, Steve?
What's that?
Anything else?
Nope.
Does anybody?
So I was noticing, I don't know where I was, but there was a school bus at a stop, and it had an arm that extended that went all the way into the other lane.
Hmm.
It almost looked like they kind of made it themselves, like it was two
Oh.
poles that went out, and the stop arm went almost completely to the other side. I don't know if that's something that we can look into.
Oh, was it on the side where the stop arm is?
Yep.
There is a company that had contacted, Dan in the fall maybe, about, an extended
Yeah,
stop arm.
like it literally went almost all the way to the white
Right.
line.
Right, and I guess I don't know, I would have to look into that to see if we could, was it in Minnesota? Was it? Yeah,
It was
I'll
somewhere
have to-
between here and Blaine. I can't remember
Okay.
where. I don't remember where it was, but it was somewhere.
I'll have to look into that, cause I know we can put stuff on there, but I don't, we have to have
I
it.
just thought I'd never seen that before. I
Right.
thought that was a really good,
No, I'll check into
Idea.
that, okay?
if I don't remember where it was, it would help me too, but sorry.
Anybody else? Thank you, Sarah. Next is board committees. Does anybody wish to present from a committee?
I had SCRED and it was, just a lot of talking about the legislature and what's going on, but as of last month, there really wasn't much to know yet. Nicole Woodward was there, she's taking Jamie Norn's spot, and that transition seems to be going really well, and they did hire then, Nicole's replacement, so it seemed like that was all going really well. And, yeah, and then we just had, annually, they have, some of their staff present to the board on like their mission, what they're doing, what their role is with SCRED, so we had just another presentation last month.
Anybody else? And we will move on to the budget calendar update.
Yep, you can see we're still in line with predictions, even with our roof project this year, so that these numbers include the roof project, so I'm happy to say we're still at 89% of our approved budget, even though we're at 91% of the school year, so our current budget is continuing to stay about that 2%, which is good to see as we come to the end of the month here. I would anticipate that comes more in line as there's a lot of end of the year expenses that will come in the next 3 weeks, but good to see that. It's not in the agenda, but an update for next year's budget. Most of our funding is matching revenue. We're still working on food service, especially. There's some discrepancies of how much revenue versus what the state's gonna give us, and then what our expenditures are. So Joanne, Sarah Severson and I will meet again this week, but that's kind of where a lot of things are not matching perfectly is in food service. We're not perfect in every other area, but they're much closer. So, we've got to kind of figure out food service so we know if that impacts our general ed budget and things like that. So with that, we do need to get a budget done this month. So I'd like to recommend a special meeting on June 26th to finalize the 23-24 school board or school budget.
Does anybody have any questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the special board meeting on June 26th at 6:30 in Hinckley.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
One second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. And next is policy approval.
So recommending approval of all 4 policies, just after conversation from last month, the fund balance policy, I did change it to match MSBA's model policy. First, it will change to number 714 to match MSBA, and then if you look at fund balance policy specifically, I did add the line that like we have in our current, where it is the policy of the school district to supplement the food service and community service funds with general fund money when those funds run a deficit. So I did put that line, it's in number 2 under general statement of policy. Otherwise, the policy is exactly how MSBA has. But I recommend approval of all 4 of those policies.
Dave made a motion. Does anybody want a
I'll
second?
second.
There's a motion, a second. I only have a question regarding the fund balance policy. So obviously, the school has to pick up the deficit in the lunch service
Correct.
and community ed.
Yeah, we really don't need that line, because if we did run a deficit, we can't run a deficit, we'd have
So
to
nobody else
cover it.
pays for it.
We'd have to cover it out of the general ed funding. I mean, it's just been the standard practice of the school board, but even if we didn't have that line in there, we can't run a deficit in those other areas, so we'd have to fix it. We hope to not run a deficit, obviously, but we've also, especially with food, chosen to keep our prices down. So that's part of it, you know, as far as food service is concerned.
I have another question. Sorry. For the minimum fund balance, cause weren't we talking about, or how the budget would be this year, if we might have to go below that 25%? Is there something that we have to put in for that, or no?
Yeah, we never talked about going below, so if everything lines up how we projected it to be in December, we're projected to be sitting at about 30%. We had talked about spending some of that to come down closer to 25%. My plan is not to come in under 25%. If it came under 25, the board directs the superintendent, if it gets to 15%, to make cuts. I don't anticipate coming in under 25%. I anticipate coming closer to 25% than 30%, but I don't anticipate coming under 25%.
That answered your question, Shelley? Okay. All right, so, we have a motion, I believe, in a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next up is Jake Pride. Does anybody have anything to add?
Leo, just so you know, I added the all conference members for each of our sports teams since on the electronic agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is terminology and acronyms for board education.
Just wondering if there's any questions on any of these. It's probably not the exhaustive list, but just a list of 28 common things that you may hear for sure Kim, Bonnie, and I talk about, may come up in MSBA meetings, but just trying to help. I know we're coming to the end of the year, but these acronyms are not gonna go away as we go forward, so just anything I can clarify, anything like that?
Any questions for Brian regarding acronyms? Okay, next up are the commodity bids.
So I'll just go through, I don't know if you wanna recommend or do all 4 at once or one at a time. I can go through each of them.
Does anybody have a preference? Then let's do
Just
all
do all?
4 at a time
Okay.
unless someone wants it.
I'll give you the summary for each one, and if we wanna talk about any more in specific, we can do that. Bakery only had 1 bid that was presented, which is our current vendor, Panda Gold. Their price has gone up, you can see from last year it was about $8,666. To this year, it would be $10,401. Very high satisfaction with Panda Gold, and it was our only bidder, so that one would be recommended. Garbage, we only had 1 bid presented by Matt Sanitation, who's also our current vendor. Again, high satisfaction, price has not changed, so the price is the same as what we just experienced this current school year. Diesel, we had 1 bid that was presented at Kurtz. And you can see the details, up to 5 cents per gallon, tax exempt built into the fleet card, diesel at the pump price, unleaded at the pump price. Again, high satisfaction in our only bid that we had. And then dairies, the one where I guess I anticipate a few more questions, certainly we'll take it at all. We had 3 bids for dairy. Beverage Solution is our current vendor. Their price did go up by themselves about 9%. Prairie Farm, you can see their price is about $28,000 higher than Beverage Solution. And then we did get another bid from, I believe it's Indian Head, which was even higher than Prairie Farm. The bid committee for dairy decided not to recommend the lowest bid, and which is Beverage Solution. Reason being, we've had this vendor now for 2 school years. We've had sour milk, expired milk. Sarah Severson and I have met with representatives from the company. They've told us they're fixing things like that. We didn't really see improved product. They told us we'd get some reimbursement. We haven't seen that yet as of today. And we believe we had one student that got sick, reported they got sick because of the milk. We don't know that by doctor confirmation, but that was the report that came to the school. So the bid committee and Sarah Severson thought it was time to move away from the lowest bid. Normally, if there are not concerns, the school board would need to go with the lowest bid, but in this case, I think there's been concerns, or the bid committee felt there was enough concerns to move away from Beverage Solution. So of the 4, and I'll certainly take questions on any of them, Pan of Gold's recommended, Matt Sanitation, Kurtz, and Prairie Farm for these 4 commodities.
Does anybody have any questions?
The 601 cartons, is that all the bad milk there was?
That we know of for sure. That's what Sarah had submitted to them, that she had knowledge. I mean, I'm sure there was more, but that's what
A lot of times the kids just throw them away.
Yeah.
They don't
Especially at
say
the high school,
anything.
they just throw them away.
Yeah,
I'm-
that.
We're
seems
certain
like
there's
really low
more.
number.
These are the ones that we had documented for sure.
That's too
And
bad,
really the
because-
601 carton, at 20 some cents a carton that they'll reimburse us, it's not a lot of money. I mean, everything helps, but at the high school especially, and I'm guessing in elementary, they just throw it away. They don't even tell the staff anymore.
Or they don't take it.
Yeah. We try to make them take it the best we can, the food service does, but they won't even open it.
So is there anything being done about that? I know in the past there was.
Yeah, Leo, the bid committee did ask me to contact the Attorney General. I have done that. I'm waiting to hear back from them.
Okay.
So I have reached out. I have filed whatever paperwork they have online. I haven't heard back from them since they said it'd probably be at least 2 weeks till I hear back.
I would like the Attorney General to reimburse us for the difference, but I'm shooting for the very big. It's in Brian's hands.
I did put that in the paperwork.
I think it's also worth noting that there's a reason why Beverage Solutions is so much lower right now. And Leo thought maybe in the next couple of years they would not be. They would be charging us what the others, because they wouldn't have.
I think it was a lawsuit, if I understand right, that forces them to have low bids for a certain number of years. But just because they have the low bid required, the quality shouldn't be affected, in my opinion, but it is.
Is there something that can be sent out to the students, letting them know that we have a new milk?
We talked about that.
I mean-
We talked about if the board approves this, that we would start getting that communication out all summer. Hey, we have, and put signage up, the principals are talking to kids.
I mean, even if the
Absolutely.
teachers can tell them on the first few days of school, there's a new milk vendor,
Yeah.
the milk is good.
Yeah.
Cause I know their students are just,
Yeah,
they'll take the milk, but they won't drink it because
They
they
won't
know.
even crack it open. And we didn't serve it like at our Lions breakfast. We chose not to. The Lions brought in their own milk, just cause we couldn't risk it.
Right. So yeah, if we can get the word out too.
So when we had like the bad milk and stuff, did we ever not have enough for the students when they came?
We always had enough that I heard. I don't know that we ever had a shortage. We've had that in years past. That may have happened with this company last year. I don't remember hearing a shortage this year.
I don't know if it was on them or on us, but there's sometimes we only had chocolate or we only had white. So we came to a shortage like that, but we always had some kind of milk for them.
Alright, so I'm looking for a motion to accept the 4 commodity bids.
I'll move that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0. What's wrong?
I voted with you, I don't vote.
No. Next up is, the long-term facilities maintenance levy and revenue.
Yep, so we have 2 of these tonight. The first one is for our school district, and when I'm done, I'm looking for approval on the resolution. What long-term, facilities maintenance, it's funding through levy process that allows us to take care of our facilities. It's different from staffing, it's different from materials, it's different from things that maybe go into the classroom with teachers. This is for our facilities. So back in 2012, the state had school districts start developing a 10-year plan, which can help think about things that may come up. This is not guaranteed every single one of these things will come up, but the intent from MDE is to get school districts to start planning instead of just reacting to things that come up and then maybe not having funding there to take care of it. So this is the mechanism that the state has for some of these areas. They have the first year, which is the base year, and these numbers are accurate that we budgeted and spent this year. And then going forward, 24 through 33 are things that, you know, between Keith, our new head of facilities, Resource Training and Solution helped, Joanne and a lady at the State Department helped us fill this out. We make sure we get our contracts on this agenda or on this document to take care of those mandated things. Like this year we had lead testing. We make sure that gets in there every so many years. We make sure our fire safety is taken care of. So some of those things that we have to do are put in this document, and that's in the top half, category 1. Then there's some categories that really don't apply to our school district because we don't have big projects that we know are coming up right now. And then at the bottom, it lets the districts kind of think about what could be coming up for our building envelope, for electrical things, for our interior surfaces, mechanical systems, and we can start planning out. Maybe things we don't want them to get to breaking, things like that. Maybe these dollars go into repairs, but it also lets us plan for things that may come up. The one change that I had in here from what you saw in your board packet is I had got a little ahead of myself thinking that we do need at some point a new gym floor off our cafeteria. But where I got a little ahead of myself was I was putting in what it actually costs, and that was more than the revenue that the state gives us. So it's something, again, part of the 10-year plan where we have to plan that and or use capital money or district dollars to help do that. So that 75,000, I had it at 150, but that didn't let us sit in our budget very nicely. So then I wanted to make sure our budget for next year and the year after is above 0. That's not saying we can't do, because obviously a gym floor costs more than 75,000, but we'd have to use capital dollars, which the state also gives us, and or just district dollars if we wanted to ever move forward with the gymnasium. So this document is planning some things to help make sure our facilities are taken care of for the next 10 years.
75,000.
Gym floor is probably at least $150,000. And as long, when we built our new one at that time, I remember Mr. Prater and Joe France saying that gym in the cafeteria is not repairable anymore, it can't be sanded down.
Yeah.
And then at that time, we talked about there was 5 or 6 years left of it. We're at about that 5 or 6 year mark, and it's starting to show even more wear and tear.
Oh, so that'd be like replacing the whole thing?
The whole floor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, geez, okay, that makes sense, thank you.
Any more questions for Brian regarding long-term facilities maintenance?
And the other link is the statement of assurances. It's just us telling the state, yep, we're gonna follow all the LTFM planning, things like that. I would sign that after you approve and send that off with our plan.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the LTFM plan.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
There's a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Next up is our spread LTFM plan.
So like us, Scred also needs to do a LTFM plan, and why we're included is because we're a member of Scred and we, give them dollars to help keep that building up to date. So they have a bus driver negotiated to add a stay bonus that would be paid at Christmas break. That stay bonus was $125 per driver. That did not get added to the support staff handbook. It was just a clerical error, just a miss on the district office staff. Would like to get that in there so we can give the drivers their Christmas stay bonus, those who were here through the Christmas holiday break.
Does anybody have any questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion to accept the addition to the support staff handbook.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Next up is, just discussion on the superintendent evaluation. I did not hear from any of you, so I will move forward with the way, that we have done the superintendent evaluation in the past. Except, this time it's gonna be like a Google survey, and Jessica's gonna help me set it up, and then you'll all get it. So that, next, board meeting after, we'll go into closed session regarding the superintendent eval. So if you do want it changed and you just forgot to email me by Friday. And then we'll look at the changes and that's it. Next up is, questions. There's a recommendation adding June 19th to contracts, and handbooks.
So new law says guidance from MSBA, Juneteenth should be treated just like districts treat July 4th, which is a paid holiday. So recommending that we add this to the support staff handbook, principal, superintendent contract. The teacher contract should not be affected now because we don't have summer school, but we will make sure it gets added when we get to negotiations for the next contract.
Does anybody have any questions?
What's that gonna cost the school district this year?
Oh, I don't know, it's budget, it's not new money, cause they were supposed to work that day anyway. So it's not additional than what was budgeted for, I can find out what that dollar amount is. It's for our custodial staff, district ops staff, both principals, and a couple secretarial staff in each office.
It just seems a little unorthodox of the legislature to pass something like this so quickly and I don't
Yeah,
know.
they had said it was gonna take effect in '24. I mean, federally, it took place federally last year. The state had told us this spring it was gonna go into place in '24. It went into place this month.
But technically it is costing us because there's no work being done
Correct,
on those days.
correct,
I think is maybe what
correct.
deal went.
Correct.
So I'm looking for a motion to accept Juneteenth as a holiday added to the handbooks and the contracts of those listed.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I don't agree with it, but I'll second it. I disagree with it 100%.
me out there if I didn't try.
100%. I was waiting for somebody else to make the motion.
I
Second it.
know, I was waiting too, but nobody was.
Well,
Thanks,
there's a
Leo.
motion
Yeah.
and a second. Does anybody want to discuss? If
We
not,
don't have a way, and there's no way around it.
Correct.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next up is the first reading of the overdose policy 516.
Yep, we wanted to get this in as a first reading. We weren't scheduled to have any first readings in June, but one of the things coming out of the legislation is that school districts are gonna be required to have Narcan in their buildings. Adrian knows way more about it than I do, but I wanted to get at least a first reading in, so when we get to our next meeting in June, we can, hopefully, we can hammer this out. This is the model MSBA policy. It's not law to have the policy, but I just thought with something like this coming on board, we should have a policy for it, rather be safe, and all on the same page, since we're bringing in something new into our school district. Narcan is law, we do have to do that, so I would recommend this policy next month, but we're still doing our research. If we, I mean, Adrian.
Here's what I will say from my tiny chair over here where I'm not supposed to talk. A week ago, this looked very grim because it looked like everything was supposed to be ready, boots on the ground, done by July 1. Nicole Woodward at Scred told me today that she is working on helping all of us in the Scred district build policy, and she said they feel it is their understanding that July 1 is when the law goes into effect, but that schools are going to be given time to put these things into place, which is what all of the school nurses in the state of Minnesota had been banking on. Our understanding up until 3 days before the end of the school year was that we would be able to all work on this through next year. And, we have time because nobody works through the summer. So it looks far less scary now than it did, and I'm waiting for more word from Nicole.
Does anybody have any questions for Brian or for Adrian? If
Is
not,
this something that only the nurses are gonna be trained on, or is there other staff? Like
No.
if you're not, if you were lecturing at, I suppose there's
So
somebody else.
here's where the really terrifying part of all of this came in for me, is it's an entire package. So you have to have a policy in place, it has to be in your handbook, you have to have an emergency response team, everybody on the emergency response team has to be trained. You have to decide where you wanna keep this, you have to decide what hours of the school day or not you want to have this available. Blah, 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 blah. There's like an entire, it's a lot, it's a very lot, and then you have to find somebody who is willing to prescribe for your district, and you have to figure out, you have to approve payment for this, they wanna have 2 doses in every building. So for us, that means 2 doses in Finlayson, which I realize sounds like a waste of $160. Given that we usually only have small children in this building, it's not a likelihood that we would need it here, but there's a lot at play there that is going to really clean up and do well is gonna take some time. And so when we originally heard this legislature went through with no warning, we were worried that we had 4 weeks to pull it together, and none of the staff works through the summer. And every school nurse in the entire state of Minnesota lost their mind, myself included. And they worked some things out, and now it's starting to, we'll get there, we're gonna be okay.
What's the shelf life on it?
I don't even know.
Oh.
I don't know, because right before they voted on this, they'd actually made it illegal for me to give it. So there's some things to work out. And in the hospital, we went through it so fast that I never, ever had to worry about the expiration date. So now I've got some research on my own. So I promised Brian that next week, when my life slows down a little bit, I could dig into it a little bit.
Google says 2 to 3 years.
Oh.
Shelf life.
There you go.
Thank you.
Also, it is a risk-free medication. It's really interesting that we're putting this much legislative action into this medication. I want yourself to know that it's a medication that is almost side effectless. You can't harm somebody really with it. So as we go forward, just know that it's not as scary as the legislative needs for it make it sound.
all right, so that will come next month for approval. This was our first read. Does anybody have any other questions? If not, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 8:19. Thank you, everybody.